All right. Hey, most leaders think success comes from better strategy, better systems, or better execution. But today's guest believes the real breakthrough happens when somewhere deeper in how leaders think, show up, and transform themselves from the inside out. Our guest today has spent years helping entrepreneurs and executives unlock the next level of leadership and personal performance. Joining us today, Bradley Rausch, leadership coach, speaker, and founder of BradleyRausch.com. Welcome to the Go for CEO channel. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, John. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it, man.
Awesome, brother. Well, hey, I know off camera, this guy was already giving me some incredible little clues of what to do with my own branding and opportunities that I've been able to grow with the Go for CEO channel. But more importantly, is you're here as a guest, and I'm always super interested, and I think our community always wants to know a little bit of the kind of the background. Were you a corporate guy? Has your family always been entrepreneurial? What are some of the beginning reasons that you started BradleyRausch.com and the innovative entrepreneur journey that you've had?
Yeah. So just to kind of give you the version of where we're at now and then backing up. So my business right now is focused on kind of two things. One is the, speaking and content and things, and the other is more on the client success side. So helping things like coaching, consulting, SaaS companies, usually making between like 20 to 30% more profitable each client without, additional ad spend. So I do a lot on the back end and really leveling up both the founder and the team and also the culture of the company to prioritize the client experience. So that's kind of where it goes. Where it starts from is I started out, dropped out of school, typical entrepreneur story, dropped out of college 2 years in, got into sales, did high ticket sales for 3 years, worked my way up to the top sales and training development company as a sales rep back in 2021. Left there after about 6 months after seeing how, to be quite frank, awful the clients were treated and realized if that's what it takes to get to, they were doing 9 figures at that time. If that's what it takes to get to 9 figures, I want no part of it. So I went back to some of the companies I'd worked with, said, hey, let me try my hand at your client success and how you work with clients. A lot of people gave me opportunities they did not have to, open doors for me when they did not have to, really thankful, and was able to eventually find my first, call it supernova client. And I took them from, they were doing 650K in top line. I took them to about a $1.2 million run rate in under 6 months, all from enhancements in the client experience, the client journey, and then also, some team culture things, working with the founders and reprioritizing, hey, instead of putting discretionary effort into marketing and front end, let's put it into how the client refers us people, how the client, is ascending into their offers, et cetera. And then from there, fortunately, things have really snowballed into, again, running a full consulting practice for these coaching, consulting, SaaS companies. And then additionally, over the last 6 to 12 months, I've also done a lot of speaking and podcasting and things like that. So have kind of both of those things going on. So.
Well, neat. Like it's interesting that you had an experience where you became a top producer, right? But the culture, as you said, was a bit, slimy or I don't know, just didn't feel right. And no matter the success of the company, right? They always say you don't leave the company, you leave the people, you leave the leadership. And it sounds like you didn't have that good of an experience to keep you around because, boy, they lost something pretty big. I mean, as a top producer, as someone that came in and within 6 months went up the ladder of production, you hate to lose that type of talent. So hopefully they've taken a look in the mirror at themselves and lost a Bradley Rausch and now seeing you succeed at what you've done on your own brand and how you've been able to build out your things. So let's take it from a perspective of you leave that company, you get introduced with some other areas, but did you take any time to assess where you're at? And that's kind of a shameless plug of my book. First chapter is always assess, like where are we? What are we doing? What resources do we have? Did you feel ready to just launch Bradley Rausch, or did you have to talk to a few mentors? What was that journey like for you before you got that Nova client?
That's a good question. There's definitely been a lot of iterations of it, in terms of how I'm showing up in the market, how I show up in my content, branding, et cetera. I'm an avid content creator. And so no matter what iteration I've been on, content creation from just an organic side, community building for me personally has always been a big pillar of it. So in terms of the kind of time or what I did to assess and kind of redirect, to be completely honest, for me, that's always been a kind of evergreen part of what I've done. I think right away, I was in this place after I left that company. I was in this place where I really had this very jaded view of what sales should be or could be, and I didn't know then what I wanted it to be, what I wanted,
Mm.
how it could or should look like in a, in a better world where clients were valued, the client experience was scalable, et cetera. So I was just kind of at this point where I was like, I know what I don't want, but I don't, and I know what I do want, but I don't know what that looks like from a tactical, actionable level. And so the entire IP of the, again, the current iteration of my company now is completely birthed from my own experiences with that, my own trial and error, my own working with clients. Like it's completely proprietary, IP with that. And so the iteration though, to answer your question, the evaluation or the kind of assessment of where I was at again was like I knew that I wanted to impact the industry in a way that was more client centric and focused on, again, building goodwill, emotional equity, bringing clients into a new kind of version of an offer that was a win-win. Just didn't know what that looked like. And so, again, a lot of people gave me opportunities when they did not have to. And I was really able to kind of do a lot of tinkering and playing around within companies and to be quite honest with you, on other people's dimes, to build out the structures and frameworks around my IP. So I would say between the content creation and always having an iteration of that, and also just the ability, the gratitude I have for the founders that I've worked with to for me to be able to come in and say, hey, I would love to play around with this. This is what I think I can do. I really want to make this happen and make it a win-win. And the results that I've been able to get just from that compounding goodwill has been incredible. So
So interesting. You bring up a way of thinking, right? Like, hey, what kind of value could I add to someone's business or certain situation, and then maybe monetize it in that sense? Is that what happened? Is that you said to them, hey, let me try this area? I don't know if it was no cost up front or maybe some nominal fee just to kind of get your expenses paid. But did you try that and then be able to have so much success that you witnessed those KPIs growing and you're saying, okay, hey, based on this, now let's set up some sort of formal, engagement or retainer, those type of things. How did you start to transition that value add to being paid?
yeah. So right off the gate, as I left the sales company, I had up to that point, I had 3 years experience in high ticket sales, been around the block in the online coaching, consulting, high ticket space. And so I was really fortunate to be able to leverage not only the 3 years I had, but also the fact that I could say I worked for this very large company that everybody and their grandmother knew at the time, and leverage that into opportunity. So that was one part of it. As far as in terms of like payment and how I, figure that out and kind of value exchange, I was always doing something. I was, fortunate to find opportunities where it was always something where it was like, hey, I have this project in the business. Hey, I need this done in the business, etc. This is what I'm willing to pay for it. And I was like, fantastic, great. And while I do this, let me also tinker around with this side. So it was more of a thing of I took the opportunity in within a kind of more defined role within a company or an organization. And then I said to the founder, because these are all, companies anywhere between 500K to 5 million, so relatively small. And I took the opportunity to go to the founder, build really good relationships with them, and just say, hey, listen, this other thing over here that's also a hot shitstorm, let me try and fix that as well. And so it was a thing of where I would take an opportunity that was more laid out and execute on that, do a good job on that, but then also look for other ways that I could add, my extra discretionary effort, and make it a win-win. So that way it was benefiting the company, enhancing my skill set experience. And then that eventually compounded into, like I said, that, the Supernova client. And then from that really from that one experience of that working with that client to take them from 600 to about 1.2 run rate in under 6 months, that really catapulted me to the point where I came in directly working within either CS or sales, sometimes marketing, et cetera, just right out the gate. So
Interesting. So, look, you developed a business out of really just ingenuity, flexibility, understanding like, hey, you're going to go find the solution that this person gave you a problem for. And in some ways, it sounds a bit kind of like the fractional world. I don't know if you've entertained that, but over the last 5, 10 years, I've seen fractional CFO, CMO, COO, CIO, CMO, right? CTO, like all these professionals that came from corporate America in maybe a C-suite level, or even if they weren't, but they had those competencies and they created value in the marketplace because, yeah, I mean, look, as a small business from 500,000 to a 5 million, you're not always thinking, oh, I need to bring on someone worth, salary of 120,000 plus
Right.
benefits and stuff. I could bring on someone for $30,000 engagement and do it fractionally. So really, you were kind of an innovator in some sense, right? In your space, especially with these little tweaks and iterations of things. So once you started getting to that point, and I know you talked about this Nova client a couple times, was it then at that point that you decided, okay, hey, here's an area that I am super good at, CS or some other space? Is that how then you honed in even tighter to a niche, or have you stayed a bit agnostic?
So working with that client, that showed me I think that just the natural draw, like you said, that I had to client success in that world. B, to be honest, how good I was at it, and then C, the need for it. And so I think it was just a perfect storm of that. I'll be honest. It's on a personal note with this. It took me about 3 years to admit to myself that this is where I wanted to focus my effort, that this is what I wanted to do. And the reason it took that long and the hesitation I had is because, I'll be honest, the industry as a whole, speaking of this, online coaching, and you've got your fitness coaching and business coaches and stuff like that. And then you've got, your consulting and fractional stuff, and even the SaaS world to some extent. It's so front of business, front of house centric. It's so how can we decrease ad spend, increase sales? When you look at these metrics, like the accountability and the discretionary effort always goes to the front end. And it's ingrained in 99.9% of the founders. And not because they don't care about the client journey, not because they don't care about the clients or want success, but just because it is the way that it is in the space. Optimization of the client journey, or how can you make a profit center from the client experience, is just so seldomly asked or considered by, again, 99.9% of these companies. And so knowing that, and also and knowing how, I guess, not necessarily hard it was, how hard it was going to be, but knowing kind of what hill I had to climb to get there. I'll be honest with you, it scared me for a long time, and I'm not going to shit all over myself, but shoulda, woulda, coulda, in terms of starting earlier than I did. What the iteration of my company, or the engagements after that supernova client, always were more on a, probably, the best term for it would probably be fractional.
Mhm.
Coming in and looking at redesigning a sales process, here and there, looking at, sometimes it was a very in-house client success thing. This version of, again, iteration of my company now and what I do now, where I come in from a bit, I'm always external. I don't do internal engagements anymore. Always external, always somewhere in the range of a 6 to 12 month engagement. Sometimes I do the longer, where I'm coming in, doing a lot of culture rebuild, doing a lot of team expectation rebuild, doing a lot of client expectation rebuild, building out an ascension offer, et cetera. That is, honestly, that has only been the iteration of what I've done for about the last year. Before that, it was always slightly more, as you said, agnostic, because I'll, again, to be completely honest, I didn't have the confidence or the power. I didn't give myself the power to step fully into this. But I've always known it was what I wanted to do, and quite honestly, what the industry needs. But it's a mountain to climb, and I feel really good about climbing it with where I'm at. So
Well, Bradley, I mean, I feel the genuine authenticity that you're sharing. Being an innovator, being a plow maker, right? The one that's plowing that field first. I recently had some things change in my life, and I was asking, okay, well, I was asking a little AI stuff. I was like, hey, what is chief revenue officer and capital structure a thing, right? Like, because I've interviewed tons of CFOs, tons of CMOs and CIOs and CTOs and stuff, and the CRO was not. And I could relate to that because I'm like, all right, well, do I have the time at the current point of my life with my kids and my responsibilities and my overhead to break into something that I have to be the innovator for? And I'm still struggling with that. So that's just something that I'll genuinely share back with you because I know that I could feel that that journey that you went through is really authentic. So appreciate you sharing that. So now, bradleyrausch.com, putting your name around it can be a little bit challenging, right? Because
Mhm.
then you are the business instead of the business being the business, right? So, what are some of the things that you've learned over the last couple of years? And are there any thoughts of like, hey, do we keep Bradley Rausch the thing, right? The brand, or is there any thoughts about changing it so that you don't necessarily have to be always the talent or something like that, or maybe it could just be that, you enjoy this space the way that it is already.
Yeah, so and this is actually a really, really common conversation that I'll have with founders who are growing, and they're like, "Hey, I built this around a personal brand. I built this around, nothing but my organic Instagram following and a couple of dollars in ad spend. Like, we're doing 5 million a year now. Should I rebrand it as, a bigger umbrella, that way other people can kind of see themselves in it, etc." And my answer both to them and also just, to answer your question about myself, my strategy, I believe in the seasonality of business. As I've said, I have many iterations of the business and hopefully many more. There's always going to be something. The only thing that will never change is that it's always changing. And
Mhm.
so I think, inverse of what a lot of people would assume or believe, I think building a business under a personal brand is actually a really powerful move for two main reasons. One, because no matter what iteration of the business that you're in, people will connect to you, especially when you have something like organic content, an ad strategy that's focused around you as the person on the ad, etc. Uh, the business will you can always fuel whatever iteration of the business you're in. But if you build the credibility around the business itself, then any other iteration of it is always going to require a new amount of credibility to be built, because you'll lose it by pivoting when it's centered around the name of the business or the how you serve people or what you do, etc. So I think it's a really powerful move to keep it underneath the umbrella of a name of a personal brand. The second reason then too is because people will always look at the reasons to join a company in terms of, and again, this is kind of a common like concern people will have, is like, oh well, if I keep it under my name, does that make enough space for the team to kind of come in? Hiring 101 is, how can I build their vision into my vision of the company and make sure that they
Mhm.
feel loyalty and awareness with what we're doing in the mission. My answer, my thought around that is always, what better vision, what better runway can you give someone than to show them, hey, there is longevity, there is brand equity, there is customer loyalty in what we're doing, because I've built it around, forget that it's me, forget that it's a name. I've built it around something that can withstand many seasons. I've built it around this idea that they will always be served, clients will always be served in XYZ ways, regardless of exactly what it is they're being served. So I think it's one of the strongest. I think it's one of the strongest plays you can make personally.
No, and I love that. I mean, I think we could have probably a podcast just on that. I guess debate and intellectual thought, right? Gopher CO is a brand, right, that we've been able to build, and the four is the 4A formula of the book. So I try to do things in four steps, is kind of the way my mind has always worked. But I've also thought about like, hey, John P. Andrade, John the Bomb. I used to introduce the podcast with John the Bomb, building others means business. That was my acronym,
I
and
love
I
it.
and I love the acronym, but I struggled with that, right? And so I love that you shared, how Bradley Rausch still consistently brings that value added. And then it's the back end, right? What do you deliver? How you've delivered it? What's the success behind it, right? That has built that culture behind what you do. So really awesome stuff. So thanks for sharing again. I think it's been all right. In the first 10 minutes, man, we've gotten deep with a lot of things that you have been able to do. So, all right. So as you went past the Nova client and started creating this, and like you said, maybe for 3 years, you were kind of, testing things, reiterating things, and now you've kind of settled into certain spaces and you'll always grow to different verticals. What has the growth side of it been for you? Has it been bringing in necessarily a certain amount of clients that you have an engagement with, and now you hit a certain mile marker of revenue, or has it been talent that you've had to teach how to, or you brought other independent contractors, stuff like that? What's been the growth aspect of the business?
Yeah, so it's revolved up to this point almost entirely around uh, the relationships and referrals. So I do it's working with me in terms of whether it's a short term, long term, whatever. I don't work with anybody that doesn't come from a referral. So I'm super proud to say 100% referral based. If I do have somebody that will come to me, cold or from content, things like that, I always have to. I always make them talk with at least a couple of my clients, just if anything, just as a temp check. I find that one of the best ways to vet clients is having them talk to existing clients, which can be
Hmm.
a double-edged sword if you're not proud of how you're showing up and serving clients, but it's a really, really powerful, it's a very powerful move, honestly, because the sale part of the process is in a lot of ways done for me, right?
Mhm.
The iteration again that I'm kind of currently in with it is much more around very bespoke consulting. I give a lot of discretionary effort, to be quite honest, to my clients in terms of, it's remembering that one of them had a really big baseball game for her kid, and her kid's doing varsity, whatever, and giving her a call after the game and saying, "Oh, hey, how did it go?" Da da da, and having an offhanded 15-minute conversation. Or it's flying in for an event that one of them set up and they're really proud of, and they're in their nonprofit and saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm here to support whatever." It's a lot of that discretionary effort right now, and I feel really fortunate that I can give that. I know a lot of people aren't in a situation where that's feasible, or they don't have the bandwidth for it, time, emotionally, whatever. But I think that I give that credit for why I've my average client tenure is 2+ years. I don't lock anybody in for anything long term. I do everything month to month, so people can leave whenever they want. And vice versa. I can also sever it if it feels no longer in alignment with me. And so really proud to say that there's a lot of that discretionary effort and equity that I'm, human capital equity, like we were talking about, that I'm able to build with them. And I think so far I've managed to do that really well at scale. There's of course going to come a point where at scale that no longer is viable, or if it is, it needs to kind of take on some other form, whether it's, you know, outsourcing it to another team member, whether it's doing it on a smaller scale per client. Like to be honest with you, I don't know what that's going to look like, but with the current version of things now, I the way I think about it is, I'll have a certain, some weeks are easier than others for sure, but I'll have a certain amount of kind of time or effort that I'll kind of give and separate out to make sure that not only is the business relationship strong, but also the personal relationship as well.
Interesting. So these engagements that you have from a Bradley Rausch entity perspective, do you set them up in I guess time frames? Is there, part of the week, Monday through Friday? Are you kind of an open source for them when they need you? Do you stay on with certain projects? Like what's kind of the real dynamic day to day if you think about what you need to do to fulfill the CS side of things with your own clients?
Yeah. So again, it's really right now, it's very much so the word I steal from one of my really good friends is, bespoke. I'm given kind of the fact that everybody comes in from a referral, right? The brand equity, the equity with the person is really, fortunately, in a lot of cases, very strong when I start off. And so given that it's the first kind of month or two, usually with somebody, it's very much coming in and they're trusting me to know that, of course, certain, need to show up, need to put in effort, et cetera, to kind of, validate that we're starting off and they're paying me, et cetera. But the deliverables, or kind of the framework, is really built out with them. once I'm inside and once I'm seeing kind of what's under the hood, uh, which again I know is, if you're landing audiences from cold, or if you're doing things really quickly at scale. I know not everybody has that kind of luxury, but I gotta be honest, it works out really, really, really well, because again, you get to build that relationship with them from the ground up, and it already starts at a really good place anyways. In terms of from an ongoing arrangement, are there projects, or the deliverables, are there certain things it's like, hey, we need this done by this day? Of course. uh but I'm really, really fortunate to, not only I think because of the initial engagement that I have with people from that referral, but also just from showing up in alignment, giving discretionary effort, um, building the personal and the professional relationship. I'm able to have some leeway in terms of not always needing that specific exact, hey, what thing are you working on? It's more, I don't know what he's working on, but I know that it's moving things forward because he's doing something. It's more of that kind of innate trust that
Mm.
sometimes isn't so clearly called out, but is really built strong, I feel. And I'm really, really fortunate to, again, work with people and have that alignment with my clients in terms of, on a financial side, real quick. My minimum monthly retainer is 2K, goes all the way up to my largest one right now is 6K a month. And obviously I'm much more involved with the 6K than I am the 2K. Uh,
Mhm.
but and it'll always be a function of scale as well. The effort and the longevity of something that is smaller, of course, is going to be much smaller than something if it's, I'm charging you 6K a month. I'm in your Slack. I'm talking to the team. I'm having offhanded one-off meetings with people after a call. Like, there's a lot of, additional things that go into that. And so I just feel really fortunate that, again, the trust and the relationship is able to start off on such a good from such a good place of credibility. And I think, if there was anything that I would say, somebody listening, or somebody who would land, a lot of their audience from cold, or sorry, land a lot of their clients from cold audiences, or would bring people in from ads, things like that. Absolutely nothing wrong at all with that. But I would look at it, ask yourself, how can you install pieces in your prospecting, in your nurture, in your conversion process, that will help you to build more credibility and kind of indoctrinate them into the culture of your clients before you start working together, or even within those first couple of weeks to months to working together. And I think long term, that will pay so many dividends for the client relationship, for the longevity of the client, things like that.
So you said a couple things that I want to kind of go back on,
Yep.
right? One of them was that, maybe a smaller engagement is less time consuming. You pick a couple projects or two, and you've been able to deliver, great results. Obviously, they wouldn't keep you just on the payroll, right? For a mystery guy that doesn't come to their office and those type of things. But the larger ones you talked about, that you're in their Slack and you're in this, you're in the team meetings, you're in kind of taking people out. So I'm super curious at that first 90 days, you're not necessarily an employee. You almost come in, right, really as a consultant fractional scenario, trying to solve an issue that maybe they were referred to you by. But then how does that company or environment, of their 5, 10, 20, 30 employees, how do they look at you, and how do you position Bradley Rausch then? Is it, um, like being in their Slack, were you updated about some sort of initiative that you then can also bring some value to? Are they positioning only for some of the competencies that you're super good at? I guess that's the understanding I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. So everybody's going to have their own culture. Everybody's going to have their own, sometimes it's more of a low key thing. Other times it's hey, everybody check out this new guy. Like, everybody's going to be different. The one thing I would say that everybody has in common as a through line is the from a team culture slash like leadership perspective. What I'll always try and do, the undertone of everything I try and do is always, how can I help you get to your goals more efficiently and more quickly? Which is why, from a kind of back to what we were saying about like the overarching umbrella of a personal brand or things like that. Like, I take people's vision for themselves within the context of a vision of a company really, really seriously. And I think if you just align yourself with and what you're doing and the initiatives you're responsible for, if you just align yourself that to what somebody wants for themselves, and it's as simple as asking you a couple pointed questions, if you can just find the places where those two things overlap, I'm not going to say everybody loves you, but it's I find it to be a much more simpler conversation than a lot of people will make it out to be. Of course, there's going to be attitudes and egos and things like that. And I'm also not saying that I don't have any of those. Trust me, I have plenty of those too. But there's there's a lot of alignment that I think can happen when again you build the professional and the personal relationship. I would say one of the biggest pieces of leverage that I have really worked hard on cultivating is my ability to grow personally and professionally with others. Like I'll share with clients, I'll share like a lot of I'll share personal stuff. I'm not dumping on them, but I'm sharing personal stuff about myself, about what I'm going through, about what I'm wanting. Like I just try and bring as much authenticity to the surface as I can and do that at scale. Like in that I don't know how that sounds to whoever's listening. It might sound woo woo, that might sound whatever, but I think the more you can learn from yourself and the more you can look inward about how to operationalize that, I think the faster you're going to be, the more velocity you have to grow your business and to grow yourself um, with that kind of intact. So I hope that answers your question.
Look at you've tapped into something interesting, right? You just even said a word, operationalize, right? But you've tapped into kind of that interesting, you know, entrance to a business, right? Especially from a consultative side. You've tapped into that emotional intelligence, you've tapped into that EQ, IQ, like where can you find value, where can you do things, and where is the value that this client is paying you for? And it could be not necessarily a specific task, it's a specific way that you've genuinely kind of made part of the team that you do. So, I wouldn't say that's super duplicatable from a business standpoint. So you have a unique set of skills, as Liam Neeson would say. But it's interesting to kind of hear you say, "Oh, well, BradleyRausch.com has been reiterated over the years, but yet you found this way to be introduced to a potential client and now bring value based on some of the ways that you do things that are unique to you and the way the perspective." So interesting, interesting. So, all right. Well, look, a lot of the business that you've had has been organic, and I know off camera you kind of taught me something super quick about asking for an engagement, asking for some sort of that human capital come back to you in the moment. So, can you go deeper on that and what you teach your clients about accessing that point of opportunity?
Yeah. So the what I spend most of my time doing now, the business as it is and the clients that I work with, it's I would say 60% is a kind of a holistic engagement of marketing, client success, customer journey, et cetera. Maybe 25% is client success focused, 25% is marketing front end focus. I have a full media team, VAs, the works and everything. So with that kind of context, most of my time though is spent on the client success side. And so the the easy way, kind of very surface level way that I break it down is the the sale when you are selling to somebody, right? It's the moment of payment, etc. I like to say that that is just the first sale. There are three other sales. So my system is called just 4A. Yours is 4A's, four sales framework. And so it's the first sale is your moment of payment, your promise to them. Second sale is onboarding. Third sale is we call it advocacy. So either getting testimonials or getting referrals. And then the fourth sale is ascension. So moving them into a continuation offer, upselling, reselling, cross-selling, whatever. And so most people, I say, will obsess over that very first sale and then leave the other two through four, leave them completely to chance, which in reality, that's where most of your profit is either going to be made or is going to be lost. And so I have, built out in terms of what I was talking about in terms of the IP and kind of things like that is very structured frameworks around how to succeed at each of those four sales, even the first sale, how to succeed at each of those four sales with as little as little overextension, from the team, because it's like coming in with a CS team that's already overwhelmed, which is the case in 99.9% of situations. The answer is not more effort. The answer is more concentrated effort in different places. And so learning how to facilitate each of those four sales in a way that increases profit, increases client experience, even increases client demand from other sources, like we were talking about referrals. And so as you were saying, with referrals, that's that third sale. So advocacy comes down to it can go two directions, ideally both, but testimonials and referrals. Testimonials obviously being saying great things about it. I will also, coach people through frameworks in terms of how to get the best testimonials, because somebody getting on a camera on a Zoom call for a 30-second video crying and saying, "Oh my gosh, you changed my life," da 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 da. In my opinion, that's not a great testimonial, because then everybody coming in is going to expect the same experience, and other people won't have the same experience. So you want to really strategically curate your testimonials, and the same can be said for referrals. The again, very surface level kind of explanation I give for this is, as I mentioned to you, is people will ask for referrals or think they need to ask for referrals at the completely incorrect time. They'll wait to ask for referrals until the results look objectively the greatest, which usually means at the quote end of an engagement, the end of a program. In my opinion, actually, that is the worst time to ask, because that is not when belief is highest. People will advocate for you, testimonials or referrals. They will advocate for you. They will use their own discretionary effort when their belief in what you are doing is the highest. And 9 times out of 10, that doesn't actually come at the end. That comes at very strategic points through the customer journey that you need to be able to map to understand, great, this person just had a really big win. Great, I just gave a very strategic amount of discretionary effort to this person. Their emotional equity is high. Now is the time to ask to cash in on a little bit of that and see how they can bring us other people that could be similar to them in a similar situation. There's also different ways to ask for referrals. You can soft ask, you can hard ask. You can only hard ask a couple of times. You can soft ask as many times as you want. And there's, language and scripting comes all around that. And so anyway, so that's just kind of a little taste of kind of the frameworks and the things that I do with most of my time today. So
No, I love it. I mean, I think it's really interesting, right? Even through our own conversation, the way to get to the power that you have has been interesting, right? Sharing the way that you engage, the way that you participate with your clientele, the way that you even bring, or I'm sorry, the clients bring you opportunities is very, very intriguing. So, look, I think we all have our own different flavor. Sometimes you don't discover that in the first year, 2 years, 3 years of your business. It sounds like you've been able to kind of redefine it, and you'll always be tweaking, right? Always be channeling kind of some of the energies that you've been talking about. So, look, as we end the podcast, we talk about CEO, right? So, client experience, engagement, and operational excellence. So, first one is, hey, what's the value proposition? And I know we've talked about a ton of it, but if you take it to a 60-second kind of value prop message here at the end of the podcast for bradleyrausch.com and what you've been able to build, what would that look like from a client experience perspective?
it's a great question. And also, I have to say, as a podcaster myself, I love and respect that, knowing this is a framework you do for all of your guests. I love that you kind of give this intentional time, and Mike, that's super, super respectable. So again, in terms of what I'm doing now, the work I genuinely just enjoy most is coaching, consulting SaaS companies, helping them make each client, I usually say, between 20 and 30% more profitable without more ad spend, also without more complexity on the back end. Everybody thinks that growth and more clients means a heavier, more operationally complex system. I am here to tell you it does not. It does not have to mean that, at least. And so that's the work I'm most passionate about, is again systematizing the client experience, making sure that every client has not only a better experience but also is more profitable in the long run.
I love it. All right. So, look, engagement. This is always a truly unique question, I believe, for founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs. How do people, or how should people really engage with you? Are you a person that loves to go out to dinner? Do you like to have a cup of coffee? Are you a cigar guy? Do you play golf? Do you like to go to events? Like, what is the best way that you would truly say, like, hey, man, you want to get with Bradley Rausch and have a great time? This is where my love comes out, is expressing it through this way of doing things. So how would you say people should engage with Bradley?
Oh, that is a fantastic question. I also want to know, after I say mine, I also want to know what the strangest answer you've ever gotten to that is, because I bet there's things.
All right.
But no, really, that's the simplest, s- best thing that comes to mind, honestly, is I love literally if I've got, a 30-minute break in my whatever calendar, whatever, da da da, or whatever, literally just hopping on a Zoom call, hopping on a phone call, whatever, and just jamming. I get, and jamming, such a great word. I get such enjoyment and fulfillment out of literally just deep diving in. I'm not a small talk person, as you probably could tell. I get so much fulfillment into literally just deep diving in, and I give as much discretionary, I give as much value as I can in those moments, and I, got nothing to hide. I'll tell somebody my life story if they want to know it, and also vice versa. I can't tell you the amount of value that has come to me throughout different periods of my life from offhanded 10 to 15-minute conversations. So I there's also so much that goes into, of course, going throughout my day, thinking about something. I'm like, oh, this thing I just told them, it would also help these other three people. I'll send them a quick text message. Like I'm a very offhanded conversational person, but also I dive deep very quickly. And so I think just building intentional relationships through that way. And obviously, we're all working from home or virtually, whatever. And I think the accessibility is super easy there. So
All right. All right. Well, I recently did a strength finder called Clifton Strengths, and my number one's woo. So what it really meant is that there isn't a stranger that I wouldn't want to meet.
oh, I
That
love
could
it.
be annoying to my wife or to my kids, but it's my personality, right? And I think that's why I've done pretty decent with this podcast. And instantaneously, I don't feel like there's anybody that I could meet that I can't just at least find something to, connect with. And the first few minutes that we were spending some time with, as I shared genuinely just something I'm, I guess, struggling with, you had an answer for me, which is so cool that intuitively you were there at a moment of having three or four interviews in a row today. And you were able to share something with me. So I'm thankful for that. So awesome. Awesome. I think the weirdest one, just to answer your question back, is
Yes.
rock climbing. So
Okay.
this gentleman was like, "Hey, well, I like to take my people rock climbing." I'm like, "Well, like, what do you mean rock climbing? Like actually on cliffs?" He's like, "Yeah, I have this one place that we go in Montana and da da." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy." Like, well, what if they don't like that? So,
That's a really interesting idea for a video podcast series. You do a podcast, every single podcast is a video podcast. Probably you have to hire some people to sit there, also rock climb and film you, but every single podcast is a conversation like about, the deep, intimate shit with this guy and his guests, and they're freaking rock climbing. And by the time they get to the top, that's the end of the episode.
wow. Okay. Well, see that's the creativity mind, man. I'm not as good at that, so we may have to do some collabs in the future. So, but awesome, brother. Well, hey, the last one is operational excellence and BradleyRausch.com and the intuitiveness that you built this business on and the genuine side of things. What are the tools, right? Are you using Monday.com or Hub, Go High Level? What are some ways that you keep yourself arranged? When you do five, six, seven engagements, and they're different companies. Like, how do you keep yourself organized? Those types of things, if you don't mind sharing.
No, definitely. So for my media side, for the marketing side, and I've got VAs and team and things like that over there. That's all managed through Monday.com. I've also used Asana in the past, so love the typical project management kind of softwares platforms. In terms of my own on the CS side, which I'm the only one doing anything there, on the team, that is really, to be completely honest, again, just to be really vulnerable, transparent here, I'm not yet at the level of scale where I've needed the additional complexity of managing client load on, like, building out like a full CRM and kind of things like that. It's really right now, it's all managed honestly through obviously calendar. The teams will have, internal tracking kind of things. And of course I, have those up and et cetera. But from a internal, as it relates to myself, internal kind of tracking or metrics or things like that. Um, yeah, to be honest, I haven't reached the level of scale yet. Hopefully will someday soon, but haven't reached a level of scale yet where I'm needing to install kind of that next layer. I'm usually just able to tap into what the companies already have, pre-existing and leverage that. So
Okay. Well, it's awesome. I mean, that's another way too, right? I mean, obviously you have a business that can fully integrate inside a company and then be able to use some of their tech stack or their
yeah.
ingenuity, right? So in a very simplistic way, That's okay too, right? I think sometimes too, one thing that I learned interviewing a bunch of MSP IT guys is, hey, John, many of these companies are overspending on crap they don't even use. Like, oh, I got this new shiny project or thing. And I'll give an example. I mean, I've heard incredible things about Go High Level, but when you get their base level things, there's like 18 or 20 things that you could really use, but most people use two, right? Or one or whatever. So it's interesting, right? You don't necessarily need to always be super high tech and complex. But yeah, the standard things, your calendar's right, when to be somewhere. You have good, a car to get somewhere or you Uber somewhere, right? That type of thing. So, and a good reliable internet, right? To be able to do
Yes.
something like this, right?
My
So,
line, I'm not drinking coffee at the moment. I usually am when I say this line, so I hold up my coffee. But my line is always give me Wi-Fi, my computer, and a coffee, and I can conquer the world. So that's my
well, I've recently gotten into this mud coffee mushroom stuff, and my wife made it, and I was like, wow, this is pretty good. I'm not a coffee guy at all, but it's been, I think psychologically, I feel like it's given me nutrients and vitamins and all these other things. So, all right, Bradley, what is the best way that if someone wants to engage with you and they're interested, hopefully through the Go for CEO program, to engage with you and bring your services to their company? What would be the best way to do that to connect with you?
follow me on LinkedIn, reach out on LinkedIn. I post daily content. It's all very tactical, focused on client success, a little bit of culture, a little bit of leadership, but mostly content for founder-led companies, usually kind of between that I usually say 500,000 to 3 million mark, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, to really operationalize client success. So
Awesome, brother. Well, hey, and by the way, I keep on doing this at the end. I got to get better at this, but they say not to do it at the beginning anymore. I guess the YouTube algorithm has learned. But if you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. If you're at the end of this podcast, Bradley laid down a ton of knowledge, and I think selfishly we want to grow this community, we want to build it up. We've just crossed over 1,000 subs. It is a milestone for us, and a lot of views have been coming from that, but the subscriber base hasn't grown as fast as we'd like. So become a subscriber. Also, check out my book that came out in October last year, 2025, The 4A Formula, Untangle Any Challenge and Think Like a CEO. I've had great bonuses in there. I've got videos that are attached to each chapter that have an interactive component to it through a QR code. So really proud of that book and some more to come in the future. So Bradley, thanks so much for coming on the Go for CEO channel.
hey, thank you for having me on, John. I appreciate it.